Alright, today we are doing something deeply irresponsible. We are ranking all of the Minecraft mobs by one question and one question only. How much are they actually useful? Not lore, not vibes, not, oh, he's so cute. I don't care about that. I care about loot, utility, progression, farms, travel, and whether seeing this mob in my world makes my life better or worse. So I split the whole roster into passive, neutral, and hostile mobs. Ranked each category from the absolute bottom all the way to the top, and by the end of this video, every section gets its own number one mob. First up is passive mobs. This is the category where Minecraft tries to sell you on peace, nature, and wholesome countryside nonsense, while quietly stuffing half the game's economy into livestock and one bald guy in a bathrobe. These mobs are supposed to help you by existing. Food, travel, utility, storage, farming, base support, that's the job. So if you're passive and you're still useless, that's honestly kind of embarrassing. Alright, so starting off in the F tier at number 35, we have the Bat. The Bat contributes ambience, jump scares, and absolutely nothing else. No drops, no utility, no progression, no secret hidden value unless the secret is occasionally flaps near my ear while I'm placing torches. Decorative cave anxiety. Nothing more. Moving up to D tier at 34, we have the Ocelot. Ocelots get left behind the second cats start doing the practical parts better. Now they mostly exist as a reminder that old mechanics sometimes get wheeled quietly behind the barn. Cool animal, weak contribution, sad ranking. That's the entire story. At number 33, we have the Sniffer. The Sniffer is wonderful if you care about ancient seeds and weird decorative plants, and much less important if you don't. Strong identity, limited gameplay punch, it's the kind of mob that shows up, sniffs dirt, and quietly starts a gardening podcast. Number 32, we've got the Parrot. Parrots are fun, cute, and surprisingly decent at making you paranoid about nearby mobs, which is honestly kind of useful. But they're still mostly shoulder decor with a warning system attached. Charming little narc bird, helpful enough, but not nearly enough to climb any higher. They go next to the Sniffer. At 31, we've got tropical fish. Tropical fish are gorgeous and almost aggressively unserious in practical terms. Aquarium value, bucket value, decorative, flex value, sure. But if we're talking real survival usefulness, this is basically expensive wallpaper that swims away from you. Tropical fish restore 1 hunger and 0.2 saturation. Technically useful and pitifully weak. They can go right here in D tier. At number 30, we've got the squid. Squids give ink sacs, and that's just enough utility to keep them from falling into the basement. Useful in crafting, useful in building, not exactly a cornerstone of progression. They mostly exist to panic spin through water like confused balloons. There you go. Moving along into the C tier, we've got the Strider. The Strider takes the Nether from a hell commute to a mildly uncomfortable boating trip, and that alone keeps it in the mid tier. Lava travel is huge in the right world, it's awkward, ugly, and indispensable, and whenever the terrain decides to be a complete prick, these guys are kind of useful. I'm not really into using these guys once I get an Elytra, so they're conditionally useful until they're obsolete. Number 28, we've got the Tadpole. Tadpoles are future frogs, which is cute and technically useful, but the mob itself is mostly just a promise. You're not really ranking the tadpole, you're pre-ordering the frog and babysitting the installation phase. Extremely C-tier behavior. Number 27, you've got the glow squid. Glow squids are the kings of, that's neat, glow ink is nice, glowing signs are nice, item frame highlights are nice, but the mob itself is mostly just decorative Claire with a crafting side hustle. Good vibes, mild impact, solidly middle of the road, but do they really glow? No, they're just bright and really stupid. At number 26, we've got salmon. Salmon are cod wearing a different jacket and expecting applause. Yes, it feeds you. Yes, that counts. No, I'm not pretending it changed my survival experience in any meaningful way. It's a fish. It does fish things. That is all. At number 25, you guessed it, cod. Cod is food. That's it. Useful? Sure. Exciting? Not even remotely. You catch it, you cook it, you move on with your life. This fish contributes the nutritional equivalent of a shrug and somehow still outranks complete deadweight. Ranked higher than salmon only due to the chance of catching it with a fishing rod being higher. At number 24, we've got the pig. The pig is the default food mob you appreciate for 5 minutes before better options arrive and spiritually evict it from the kitchen. Useful, obviously, but mostly in that plain white bread kind of way. Competent, forgettable, and edible. That's the pig. Right in C tier. Moving up to B tier, we've got the zombie horse. Zombie horse is mostly a flex mount, but a mount is still a mount. Limited access keeps it down, yet it's practical enough to count. It looks like it lost a custody battle with daylight, but can still move, so I guess that's worth something. At number 22, we've got the camel husk. Camel husk feels like somebody looked at the regular camel and asked, what if this thing came pre-hunted? Still useful as a mount, still does the transportation job, just with that unsettling dead spice that says your vacation has gone horribly wrong. Can you get up? You know what? Go away. Number 21, you've got the rabbit. Rabbits are fast, stupid, hard to hit, and somehow still carve out enough value to avoid the lower tiers. The rabbit's foot matters for potions, food exists if you're desperate, and that's enough. Tiny jumping ingredient with a surprisingly decent resume. At number 20, you've got the snow golem. Snow golems are hilarious because they look like a festive mistake and still provide actual value. Snow generation, light distraction utility, and goofy defense support, all respectable. Not world shaking, but there's something satisfying about outsourcing combat to a pumpkin head. And goodbye, guys. Well, now you made my world all snow-like. Let me do the thing. I know how to do the thing. Why aren't you letting me do the thing? That's what I did wrong. Number 19, you've got the turtle. Turtles are slow, fragile, and worth protecting because the shell rewards actually matter. Turtle shell progression is niche but real, especially for players who care about water utility. Good mob, specialized role, and permanently stuck with the posture of a worried sandwich. At number 18, we've got the armadillo. Armadillo exists to help your wolves from folding like lawn chairs in combat, and that's respectable. Not game-defining, not economy-breaking, but real support value. A sturdy little side-grade mob that basically says, I'm here for the dog people. At number 17, we have the Wandering Trader. The Wandering Trader is a scam artist in a bathrobe, but sometimes he accidentally brings you exactly the dumb little item you didn't want to go find. Inconsistent? Absolutely. Useful often enough to matter? Also yes. That's textbook B-tier energy. Number 16, we've got the axolotl. Axolotls are adorable, effective underwater helpers, and somehow they still feel like they were designed to emotionally manipulate you into building an aquarium. Solid utility in ocean fights, especially early on, but definitely more situational than a universal powerhouse. A useful little goblin. Number 15, we've got the donkey. Donkeys are the practical cousin nobody respects enough. They carry chests, they move your junk, and they make early logistics way less awful. Not glamorous, not fast enough to dominate the transport hierarchy, but absolutely the kind of mob you miss when it's gone. If you guys actually use these. At number 14, the mule. The mule is for players who looked at the horse and said, cool, but can it carry my mistakes? Trust transport is real value, less glamorous than a pure speed mount, but logistics win games and the mule knows it. Quiet, solid utility. Well, minus the quiet part. At number 13, we've got the skeleton horse. Skeleton horses are cool, which is not usually enough to justify a ranking, but this one also functions as an actual useful mount. It's rare, stylish, memorable, and mechanically solid. It's the goth version of travel utility, and I respect that. At number 12, we've got the camel. The camel is a travel mob with actual personality and a seating arrangement that says, yes, bring a friend. We'll both bounce across the desert like idiots. Strong movement utility, just not so dominant that it cracks the absolute upper crust. At number 11, the top of the B tier, we've got the frog. Frogs get this high because frog lights are cool too, and too useful to ignore. Also, the mob itself is just weird enough to stay memorable. Funny little goblin amphibian with real lighting value. Hard to not respect that hustle, honestly. Alright, entering the A tier. We're starting off with the mushroom. The mushroom is absurd in the best possible way. Food utility, mushroom access, suspicious stew nonsense, and the general vibe of I should not exist, but I'm still more useful than half the roster. Weird cow, strong cow. Respectable cow. Alright, bye guys. At number 9, we've got the horse. Horses are one of the cleanest upgrades in early survival. Faster travel, better exploration, less time dragging your feet across 3 biomes because your base idea got a little ambitious. Great mobility, not endlessly scalable, very good, not transcendent. Also a leather source. At number 8, we've got sheep. Sheep are why your first night doesn't feel like a hostage negotiation. Wool makes beds, beds skip the night, bed set spawns, and wool stays useful for banners and building. Quietly, one of the most passive mobs ever made. Alright, at number 7, we've got the chicken. Chickens are one of the earliest mobs you can exploit guilt-free because they're just free value with feet. Eggs, feathers, food, farms, so simple, a sleep-deprived mole could build them. Weak in a fist fight, strong in a spreadsheet, classic utility. At number 6, we've got the cat. Cats scare off creepers, bully phantoms by existing, and occasionally bring you loot like a tiny divorced landlord trying to repair their relationship. That's phenomenal value for something that mostly just sits on your bed and judges your interior design choices. At number 5, we've got the Elay. The Elay is like hiring the world's smallest intern and discovering that it's actually competent. Item collection, sorting support, farm cleanup, less time crawling around your floor like a goblin. Maybe not game-defining, but close enough that I'm not arguing. At the top of A tier, we've got the cow. Cows do 3 things, and all 3 matter. Leather for books, beef for food, milk for removing effects. That's early game, mid-game, and oh god, what did I drink utility all wrapped into one extremely exploitable rectangle. Elite baseline value. Kicking off our S tier at number 3 is the Happy Ghast. The Happy Ghast is one of those mobs that sounds useless until you realize that it gives you aerial movement, platform utility, and then suddenly the whole game changes. Building gets easier, traveling gets a little weirder and slower, and somehow I'm fine trusting this smiling balloon. Also, that cuteness factor is definitely there, especially when they're a baby. Alright, bye guys. That was sad. Oh no, I have never heard that sound. Coming in at our number 2 slot, we've got the Copper Golem. Copper Golem walked into Minecraft and basically said, hey, you know that chest monster ruining your base? Yeah, I'm gonna beat it to death. Base storage automation is absurd utility, and this thing saves time, sanity, and your dignity. Easy S tier. And if you couldn't figure out what our number 1 passive mob was by this point, it's the Villager. Villagers are not a mob. They are a hostile corporate merger wearing a bathrobe. Enchants, gear, food, emeralds, blocks, discounts, entire economies built off one guy mumbling near a lectern. If this guy isn't your number 1, you got scammed by a librarian. If only the player base treated these guys better. Because, I mean, watch this. So over here we have our passive mob winner right here, the Villager. Obviously, no contest. I don't honestly think anyone could disagree with me on this. Next up, neutral mobs, or as I like to call them, Minecraft's emotional support time bombs. These are the mobs that are chill right up until they decide that they are absolutely not. And then suddenly you're getting jumped because you made eye contact, you bumped a baby, or you committed the unforgivable crime of standing nearby. Some of these things are insanely valuable. Some are glorified lawsuits with fur. Let's sort out which ones are actually worth the risk. Alright, the only mob in F tier is the polar bear. Polar bears are a classic Minecraft scam. Dangerous looking animal, also almost no meaningful reward. You see one, you think maybe there's something here, and the answer is basically no. It's just an angry snow mammal with no real player facing upside. Except for dropping fish. That's it. Kicking off our D tier at number 18, we've got the panda, another bear. What the heck, Mojang? Why can't you make a good bear? Pandas are wonderful if your criteria is, does this mob make me smile like an idiot? And far less wonderful if the question is, does this mob help me actually do anything? Mostly novelty, mostly vibe. Basically a luxury pet with animations and personalities. Goodbye. If this was a tier list based off of my favorite animal, I would not be putting the fox at number 17 in D tier. But foxes have charm, weird item behavior, and exactly enough novelty to make you want one before realizing they're not going to revolutionize your world. Cute? Absolutely. Important? Not especially. This is a pet with side mechanics, not a workhorse. This is going to be sad. Oh, God. Alright, starting off our C tier at number 16, we've got the goat. Goats are funny because their greatest utility is sometimes just launching your stupid body off a mountain when you stand in the wrong place. The horns are alright, the chaos is memorable, and overall they land squarely and pretty fine. Nothing crazy. At number 15, we've got the cave spider. Cave spiders are spiders that decided that regular toxicity wasn't enough and added poison like petty little creeps. String still matters, so I can't tank the ranking too hard, but most players are not farming these because they love the experience. This one I'm happy to do. At number 14, we've got the pufferfish, another poison mob. Surprise, surprise. Pufferfish are tiny aquatic lawsuits, but they do matter for water-breathing potions, and that saves them. Useful ingredient, irritating package. This mob looks like a stress response with eyes, and yet somehow keeps forcing its way into legitimate brewing conversations. Ready? Here we go. Oh, jeez! Ah! Go away. Alright, at number 12 and 13, we've got the llama / the trader llama. Trader llamas are mostly here because leads are valuable, and Minecraft occasionally hides real utility inside a stupid haircut. They're not game breakers, but they do enough to avoid the garbage tiers. Caravans are handy, chests are handy, and spit-based conflict resolution is funny enough that I'm willing to overlook the rest. Not dominant logistics mobs, but certainly not deadweight either. Wait, actually, I got that wrong. Sorry, hold on. I meant to put those guys in B tier. There we go. Yeah, no, they're a little better than that. Anyway, up next is the spider. Spiders are solid only because string is solid. That's really the heart of it. Bows, wool, fishing rods, easy farms, constant relevance. They're creepy, yes, but at least these 8-legged weirdos show up with some useful materials. Reliable, ugly, and effective. Alright, kicking off our A tier, we've got dolphins. Dolphins are fantastic when you're in the ocean and borderline irrelevant when you're not, which is basically the definition of upper mid-tier. Dolphin's grace feels amazing. Suddenly, swimming stops feeling like drowning with extra steps and starts feeling intentional. Just don't accidentally punch one of these guys in a horde, because you will regret it. Alright, bye guys! That was sad. Number 9, you've got the Zombie Nautilus. Zombie Nautilus is the cursed version of a good idea, which somehow still leaves it useful. Same general underwater traversal value, just more undead seasoning. It looks like the ocean itself filled a grievance, but mechanically it still helps. Alright, so at number 8, you've got the normal Nautilus. The Nautilus is one of those mobs that instantly becomes valuable the second you care about underwater travel. Better movement, ocean utility, and a niche that actually matters. It's not flashy, but if you like water exploration, this thing earns its keep. Number 7, we've got the wolf. The wolf starts out a dog and eventually becomes a furry knife drawer that follows you into caves. Great companion, real combat help, huge emotional support value, and now with armor support it's even better. Strong mob, strong friendship, strong bite. Sad death noise. At number 6, we've got the Drowned. Did you know the Drowned was a neutral mob? I did not. Drowned are one trident away from shooting themselves into relevance forever. They're annoying, yes, but if you get a trident out of the deal, suddenly the whole relationship changes. Underwater undead with actual payoff. And that alone earns some serious respect. And finally, at the top of the A tier, are the bees. Bees look harmless, they sound adorable, and they casually supply honey, honeycomb wax, building utility, redstone nonsense, and farming support. They're one of those mobs that keeps you paying dividends long after you thought you were just making a cute garden. But again, don't hit them. Poison. Alright, let's start our S tier for the neutral mobs. At number 4, the Endermen. See if these guys stay. Endermen drop pearls, and pearls are one of those materials you only fully appreciate when you don't have them. Travel, progression, Eyes of Ender, utility, farms, all of it. And they also move blocks like they're remodeling your property at midnight, which is uncalled for, but they're still useful. And really annoying when they die. Alright, at number 3, we have the Piglins. Piglins are basically casino tellers with anger issues. Give them gold and they throw useful nether junk back at you until you accidentally breathe wrong and the entire room becomes a prison riot. Still, bartering is too strong to not rank any lower. Debatable, but at number 2 are the zombified piglins. Zombified piglins are proof that Minecraft will let you industrialize a hate crime if the drops are good enough. The gold farms that are built around these things are obscene. Passive until provoked, and then suddenly your whole roof is a legal issue. Incredible value. And if you couldn't guess, the number 1 neutral mob is the Iron Golem. The Iron Golem is what happens when a village finally gets sick of your nonsense and hires private security. Protects villagers, drops iron, and enables one of the best farms in the game. Big, simple, effective. An absolute refrigerator of a unit. Best neutral mob. And now we get to the hostile mobs, which is where Minecraft stops pretending to be your friend. This is the real test. If this thing is trying to kill me on sight, what do I actually get for returning the favor? Because some hostile mobs are walking jackpots, and some are just annoying. Some of them exist purely to make your night worse and then die with literally nothing useful in their pockets. So, let's dig through the psychopaths and find out which monsters are actually worth the trouble. Alright, bottom of F tier, the only mob in F tier is the Vex. The Vex is one of the easiest bottom tier placements you could ever hand out in your life. No meaningful utility, awful to fight, phases through walls, swings like a caffeinated tax auditor, and exists purely to make evokers even more annoying. Garbage creature. Alright, moving up to D tier, at number 30, we've got the Silverfish. Silverfish exist to turn mining into an infestation. There's probably a useful niche somewhere in the abyss, but for most players, these things are just tiny, screaming penalties for touching the wrong block. Minimal value, maximum, oh for God's sake, energy. At number 29, we've got the Piglin Brute. Piglin Brutes are what happens when Mojang looks at regular piglins and says, what if bartering had a bodyguard with no hobbies? No trades, no real farm value, no useful drop worth getting excited about. It exists to hit you in a bastion and then die with nothing interesting to say for itself. D tier. Alright, at number 28, we've got Endermites. Minus the race war with the Endermans, Endermites are the kind of mob that make technical players go, actually, in this one hyper-specific setup, and everybody else goes, no, I'm not listening. Tiny, annoying, niche to the point of parody. Real use exists, but broad use absolutely does not. Number 27, we've got the Creaking. The creaking has atmosphere, tension, and the general vibe of your house deciding it hates you. From a utility standpoint, though, it's thin soup. Cool mob concept, limited direct benefit. Great horror prop, mediocre survival partner. That lands squarely near the bottom. All right, at number 26, we've got the Zoglin. The Zoglins feel like the Nether accidentally exported its anger in the wrong format. They're dangerous, memorable, and not exactly dripping with player benefit. You can hardly get value out of them, and compared to better mobs, they're mainly just noise. Moving up to the C tier, at number 25, we've got the Husk. Husk are zombies with desert seasoning and not enough payoff to justify the drama. Slight variation, some basic annoyance, same low value drop identity. They're not useless, but they're definitely one of those mobs that you kill immediately and then you forget they ever existed. Speaking of, number 24, zombies. Zombies are iconic, common, and about as individually useful as a single paperclip. Rotten flesh is something, early drops are something, and that's enough to dodge the bottom. Foundational mob, underwhelming personal contribution. The mascot of technically useful. At number 23, the Warden. The Warden is amazing design and awful utility, which is a painful combination for a tier list like this. Incredible encounter, terrifying presence, and almost zero thank God I found one energy. This thing is a boss-shaped warning label that decimates you for breathing too loud, and can apparently smell you. Go away. It's literally the only thing they drop, and you can get them everywhere else where they spawn. At number 22, going up to B tier, we've got the Vindicator. Vindicators are raid pieces more than they are standalone utility kings, and they hit like a truck. They look like they've never once enjoyed a meal, and basically matter because raids matter. Respectable by system association, not because I'm excited to personally invite one over. At least if you name one Johnny, it can be used as a psychotic hitman. Here, we'll grab the creaking. What? No way! I didn't know that! The Vindicators are afraid of the creaking. I was gonna have them attack it with the Johnny thing, but yeah, okay, whatever. My example has failed. Alright, at number 21, we've got the Elder Guardian. The Elder Guardian is only important in the same way that a locked door is important. It matters because it blocks things you want. Its personal contribution, mostly, is making you miserable inside of Monument. Significant obstacle, decent context value, weaker direct payoff. I wanted to put these guys lower, but Phantoms. Phantoms are sleep deprivation, tax collectors, and I hate them personally. But membranes are useful enough that I can't pretend otherwise. Slow falling is nice, elytra repair matters, and sometimes the worst creature in the room still brought the right paperwork. Alright, at number 19, we've got the Ravager. Ravagers hit like a truck full of workplace violence, but they matter because raids matter. They're less valuable drop machine and more high-pressure part of a reward pipeline. Still, useful in the broader system, even if individually they're mostly teeth. You can at least get a saddle when you kill them. At number 18, we've got the Pillager. Once again, pillagers themselves are not incredible, but they're attached to raids, and raids are where the real money is, so they end up being valuable by association. Kind of like a terrible employee whose one skill is knowing where the good vending machine is. At number 17, we've got Skeletons. Skeletons are useful in the most boringly legitimate way possible. Bones matter, arrows matter, farms matter. But they're so standard and so common that it's hard to rank them higher without feeling like I'm giving Employee of the Month to beige paint. Alright, at number 16, we have collectively the Parched, the Stray, and the Bogged. These are all variations of the same basic Minecraft premise. What if we took a normal hostile mob and marinated it into a biome? Bogged and Stray actually pull their weight with poison and slowness utility, while the Parched at least gets to fire weakness-tipped arrows and be more than just a desert decoration. So as a group, they're specialized cousins of the generic undead lineup. 2 solid contributors, and one guy whose best argument is making your sword arm worse. Alright, moving up to A tier, we've got the Magma Cube. Magma Cubes are just slimes that fell into a barbecue and came back meaner. But Magma Cream matters, Froglight setups matter, potion support matters. It's a strong niche mob with real utility and honestly, impressive for a sentient pile of stovetop grief. Number 14, we've got the Hoglin. Hoglins are one of the few mobs in the Nether that say, I will kill you, but I will also feed you. Renewable food and leather in hell is excellent value. Violent meat machine, very respectable hostile mob with actual payoff. Alright, at number 13, we've got the Breeze. The Breeze earns this spot because anything tied to the wind charge utility immediately matters. Fun moving tech, decent combat implications, and a unique identity that doesn't just feel like another recolored hate machine, even though it's basically just a blaze. At number 12, we've got the Gas. Gas are floating divorce papers with a sound effect, but gas tiers matter. Regeneration potions, end crystals, useful crafting routes, all tied to this giant screaming tissue paper demon. Awful company, respectable payout. That's a genuinely viable nuisance. At number 11, we've got the Guardian. I was gonna put these guys in water, but it's more fun to just watch them flop around on land. Guardians are what happens when an aquarium gets sick of tourists and installs lasers. Prismarines, sea lanterns, monument resources, actual building value, all fantastic. They're annoying as hell to deal with, but the reward pipeline is genuinely too good. And that one just went into the lava. Bye guys. Alright, moving up to S tier, we're starting off with the Witch. The Witch is a horrible swamp pharmacist who spends the whole fight drinking and somehow still drops a grocery list of useful ingredients. Redstone, glowstone bottles, sugar, potion junk, and farm value. Incredible returns for murdering one rude potion aunt. At number 9, we've got the Zombie Villager. Zombie Villagers are incredible because they start as a problem and end up as an investment. Cure one and suddenly you've got discounted trades, better economics, and the warm satisfaction of turning medical intervention into capitalism. That's ridiculous value for one mob. The iconic green phallus didn't get number 1, he got number 8, but the Creeper has ruined millions of houses and still makes top tier because gunpowder is just that important. TNT, rockets, fireworks, farm value, all massive. He's a walking green malpractice suit, but the drop table is just too good to ignore. Just don't make him mad. Alright, above the Creeper at number 7, we've got the Wither Skeleton. Wither Skeletons are tall, rude, but directly tied to beacon ownership. That alone keeps them elite. You want skulls, you want the Wither, you want the Nether Star, you want that glorious laser box of productivity, you gotta go through these guys. Start farming, coward. No shortcuts. Alright, I'm not a massive redstoner, but at number 6, we've got the Slime. Slimes look stupid, they sound stupid, and they secretly run half the game's engineering department. Slime balls lead to sticky pistons, they used to lead to leads, redstone utility, and all sorts of nonsense you absolutely notice once they're gone. They're ugly little gelatin freaks with an elite resume value. Entering the top 5, we got the Blaze. Blazes are miserable to fight, but they're essential to kill, which is a very Minecraft way of doing business. Blaze rods are brewing, progression, eyes of ender, and all the important stuff. You don't skip blazes, you pay the fire tax. At number 4 is the Evoker. The Evoker is like a horrible landlord that summons teeth from the floor and hands out totems of undying. That's the whole case. Extra life item. The game literally gives you another chance because you murdered this wizard in a mansion. Alright, these top 3 are really hard to rank, but at number 3, I'm gonna put the Ender Dragon. The Ender Dragon is not just a boss, it's the giant flying receipt at the end of your progression. Beat it and the game opens up. End access, gateways, giant XP payout. It's a massive milestone and it gives you access to shulker boxes and the Elytra. Easy top 3. At number 2 is the Wither. The Wither is a floating divorce between explosions and bad intentions, but it drops a Nether Star. And Nether Star is a beacon, and the beacon is the late game quality of life so ridiculous it might as well be performance enhancing drugs. Easy number 2 spot. Probably a number 1 contender. Alright, and sitting at the number 1 slot is the Shulker. Shulkers drop shulker shells, and those become shulker boxes, and those are the moment that your inventory stops feeling like a raccoon attack. One mob unlocks portable storage, and suddenly every expedition becomes 10 times less pathetic. Huge payoff, easily the best mob in Minecraft from a utility standpoint. And so those are the best and worst mobs in Minecraft, dragged from the basement all the way up to the throne, and judged entirely by one simple standard. What do they actually do for me? Some of these mobs are walking jackpots. Some of them are niche specialists, and some of them are just floating, screeching, unemployed mistakes. Alright, so let me know. Which rankings did I get right? Which ones did I utterly do horribly? And which one are you irrationally defending for reasons that absolutely will not hold up in court? Protect your villagers, farm your blazes, and stop pretending that bats deserve rights.